Welcome back to Revelation Tour of the Bible. This study is going to be a special study, we could call it. It's going to be a supplemental slash correction study. Hopefully, I don't do any more of these unless you guys want to do the supplemental part. This is going to be a supplemental to what was given in this last study dealing with Daniel and Thyatira, and a correction as well because of some things that I said. There was a little there's a little mistake. Most of it is correct, but there's a little mistake. We're going to cover that, and also we're going to supplement what was given so we can have a better understanding of the stuff that was presented. Let's go ahead and have a prayer first before we start the study. Thank you, Father, for this time. Thank you for allowing me to see the mistakes and being able to use this time to correct it, and also as well supplement so that your word and the interpretation that has been given and shown could have more force. I pray that the people who watch this could be informed and be able to make better decisions in their life, especially dealing with religion and a relationship with you. I pray you and ask for you to help me throughout this study to be able to present it. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. So let's set up here the screen again. So the mistake that I made was when I spoke about the year 508, and I mentioned it was Justinian in 508, and that's not necessarily true. Now, everything else I said about Justinian is pretty much correct, except for the year 508 for Justinian is not correct. Now, still, the year 508 is absolutely correct. When we talked about the 290 years prophetic portion of Daniel 12, it did start in 508. It's just I had a little bit of mix up, and we're going to go into that, and we're going to get into a little bit deeper into Daniel, and we're going to actually understand why it is 508. And I will talk about Justinian here as well. Let's go ahead and kind of retouch a little bit some of the stuff we talked about. And then we're going to look at a lot of Wikipedia, which will help with the historical portion of these things. But let's get the biblical, and then we'll go into the history of this stuff. So in Daniel 7, we spoke about the four beasts, right? And these four beasts were, according to the prophecy in itself, which we covered afterwards, that I was going to give it here. Anyways, the four beasts are Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. Now, I'm going to go through this quickly, and I don't have anything necessarily down on a piece of paper, so this is kind of an improv, so just bear with me. So after the four beasts, right, which historically is Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece, we see here, verse 7, that Daniel sees a fourth beast, right, which later on he's going to ask about this. And in that fourth beast, if you look at the highlighted portion of the last part of verse 7, it said it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. One of the things that I covered was that the previous beasts, the way that they came into power was through war and conquering, whereas Rome happened to be part of one of the divisions after Greece divided into four, happened to be one of the divisions, and it grew from there. And with logistics, they had a standing army, yes, but also the way that they kind of took over wasn't necessarily through war, but it was more through diplomacy. Now, this beast had 10 horns, and we spoke about these 10 horns that come out of the head are 10 kingdoms. Let's see here. Verse 20, it told us that the 10 horns that were in his head and of the other which came up. So we also spoke about the little horn that came within the 10 horns. So first you have the 10 horns, and then the little horn comes from within. These 10 horns, they come from the head, so they came from within Rome. These are so Rome kind of divides up into 10 in a sense. If you look at history, you had Rome, was those 10 tribes or 10 kingdoms, or whatever you want to call it, was kind of came from Rome itself as it was dividing up. Um, so it came from Rome. So verse 24, the 10 horns out of this kingdom, Rome, are 10 kings that shall arise. See, they don't come conquering, they actually arise from the same beast. They actually come from Rome. And another shall rise after them, which is a small little horn. Verse 24. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And then, so that's what those 10 kingdoms are. Now, the little horn we mentioned was the papacy. Um, so to give you a little bit more context, and then we're going to go to Daniel 8 and 9. No, Daniel 8. We're going to go to Daniel 8 afterwards. The let me get my bearings here. The 10 tribes that came out, or these 10 kingdoms that came out from Rome itself, or from within Rome, the little horn was different from them, and we spoke about that being the papacy. And the 10 before the papacy started coming into power, we know that Rome was pagan. And so these kingdoms were also pagan. But as we studied in the third church, we saw that paganism and Christianity started to mix. There was a compromise, and therefore paganism started converting over to Christianity. Now, this was a time period. Did not happen one day to the next. It took many, many, many years for paganism to completely be the minority with no power whatsoever. So this little horn that came out was different and diverse from them. Let's go ahead and read Daniel 8, so we can put some of this stuff together so that I could try to wrap this up as soon as I possibly can. Hopefully, it doesn't take too long. In Daniel 8, we have again, and I'm gonna go through it quickly. We have another vision, which is basically covering the same time frame as Daniel 2 and as Daniel 7. Again, Daniel 2 covers from the time of Daniel, the Babylonian king, all the way to the end. Daniel 7 again starts from Daniel, the Babylonian kingdom. I'm not saying that Daniel is a Babylonian king. It's just from that Babylonian kingdom, right, all the way to the end. And now Daniel 8, this is the third year. It says here, in the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, and even unto me Daniel. After that, which appeared unto me at the first. So this is another vision, and this is at the very end of the Babylonian kingdom. So when we see these symbols are not going to start with the Babylonian kingdom as we saw with Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. It's going to start with Media Persia. So I saw in a vision, and came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan, etc. All right, so verse 3. He lifts his eyes and sees, and beholds, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high. But one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. We're going to see the interpretation afterwards within the very same chapter, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to you now. This ram represents Media Persia. It has 2 horns. Horns, as we saw in Daniel 7, deals with kingdoms or powers. Media, or the Medes, were one kingdom or power, and the Persians were another, and they were united together. But the Persians were stronger than the Medes, or they were bigger than the Medes, even though they were joined together. So therefore, this is why you have one horn greater than the other. Just like we saw that the bear, had one side higher than the other. I saw the ram, verse 4, pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. So Media Persia pushed westward. So if you imagine imagine a map. Imagine a map. Find where Media Persia goes into. We're not going to show this right now, but they conquered to the west, to the north, and to the south. And then I was concerning verse 5. Behold, an he-goat. So first we have a ram. Now we have a he-goat. Came from the west, right? So as Media Persia is pushing to the west, now in north and south, meaning that this kingdom comes from the east. Now you have a he-goat, another kingdom, that came from the west. on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. So this kingdom is going to be Greece, and he had a notable horn between his eyes, and this horn here is talking about a leader. Okay, I know I said the horn is king, powers, etc. This horn is a leader. It's between his eyes, and this leader, this powerful leader, right? He comes and he's conquering the whole earth, and he touched not the ground. He's doing it extremely fast. And he came to the ram that had two horns. So Greece comes over and meets up with Media Persia, which I had been standing before the river, and ran unto him in the furious party. Just comes in, the the goat comes in and smacks into the ram. In other words, Greece fights Media Persia. If you look at the history of Alexander the Great, you'll see that he actually did war against Medio Persians because there was, I think I remember reading something about his father or the Medio Persians had it. There was a whole grudge between them, and so therefore this is why they went directly after the Medio Persians. Verse 7, and I saw him close unto the ram. So Greece goes close unto Media Persia, the ram. And he was moved with choler against him and smote the ram and break his two horns. So Greece battles against Media Persia and wins and breaks their power. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So basically, Greece was extremely powerful, and Greece completely destroyed, annihilated the Medo-Persians. Therefore, the he-goat and Greece, if you notice, if we remember history from what we were taught, basically Greece conquered the known world at that time during that time frame. Alexander the Great was a great leader, and he conquered really quick. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. So the horn, I'm saying it's Alexander the Great, but again, the horn is a power. When this power was broken, there was four other horns that came out of it towards the four winds of heaven, north, east, west, and south. Daniel 11 also speaks about this very same event because Daniel 11 is an explanation of these events, but we're going to stay here with Daniel 8. So when Alexander the Great, he was a strong power, died when he was strong, right? When he was at his peak, we know that Alexander the Great, which had Greece all together as one, died at a very young age. And we know that his generals, and then it ended up becoming, after they started, everything settled, it pretty much got divided up in between his four generals, to the north, to the east, to the west, and to the south. East, west, south. So the kingdom basically split up into four, and eventually once that settled, then you had a kingdom to the north of Israel, and then you had a kingdom to the south of Israel. And so when you read Daniel 11, that's what it's speaking about. The king of the north and the king of the south. It's all in reference to Israel. The northern part or portion of Greece that under the control of that one general, and the ones that were to the south of Israel. But we're gonna stick here. So now and here in verse 8, it's not talking about the north and the south. Okay, that's going to be covered. That covers Daniel 11, but just in the simplicity of it, because it's just being simple right now. Greece breaks up into four, like I mentioned, and out of one of them, verse 9, came forth a little horn which waxed exceeding great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. So this little horn, this little power, right, that comes from one of the four directions from where Greece broke up, and we're going to see which direction that is, grows, it waxes exceeding great, meaning it's small, but then it grows, and it grows towards the south, towards the east, and towards the pleasant land. The pleasant land is in the Bible is talking about Israel. So if it's going towards the east, it means, and towards the south, it means that this particular power is towards the west side. And this little power is Rome. And we're going to see Rome here in a second, in a bit. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. I'm not gonna get into much into that verse because it'll be a long explanation, but let's continue on with the verse 11. Yeah, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. Now, we're gonna spend some time here on this portion here of the daily, because part of this is part of the reason why we are I'm doing this supplemental slash correction. So this, when it says he magnified this little horn, this little power, this is not the papacy yet, okay? Because the paper, we know that the prince of the host is who? Is Jesus Christ. He magnified himself even to the prince of the host. That is Jesus that is being spoken of. Let me see if I could find here. All right, so let's stay there on there, and let's catch up with the actual interpretation so that you can see it's actually on here. So let's skip to verse 15. And it came to pass when I, even Daniel, had seen the vision and saw for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And this is, we find out later on, this is Gabriel. Verse 19. Let's just go ahead and skip there. And he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed, the end shall be. Again, now here's the interpretation of what I was saying. The ram, which thou sawest having two horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. The rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So this great horn here, in let's start with verse 20. The two horns in verse 20, the angel Gabriel, which we find out later on, that's the angel that's speaking, represents the kings of Media and Persia, not one king, but the kings, which deals with with kingdoms. We already spoken about that. But in Greece, the great horn is the first king, represents the first king, which is Alexander the Great. Now, I'm not saying Alexander the Great was a king. I don't believe he was a king with that title, but remember, this is all symbols. So that's what Daniel understood: the king, the ruler. Verse 22, now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. So when it means his power, it's talking about Alexander the Great, that first king. So when the first king comes to his end at his highest, when Alexander the Great at his peak, right, as a young man, ends up dying, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation of Greece, but not in the same power as Alexander the Great. They did not have that same power as well, as I said, as Alexander. But there's four kingdoms, so they separate north, east, west, south. And in the later time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. So at the time that these kings, these four different, these four different separate later time of their kingdom, these four separate entities, they come to the full after some time has passed, a king of fierce countenance, this is the little horn, and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. The little horn stands up, and we already read it came from one of the four kingdoms, and we saw, because it goes to the east and to the south, it has to be west, north. But I'm telling you now, it's Rome. So it came more from the west. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully and shall prosper in practice and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. So Rome, right, he shall be mighty, but not by his own power. This is why he's also diverse, because of the fact that the other kingdoms, when they came into the scene, it was by their own power. But Rome, not necessarily through military power, but more through diplomatic practices, they were able to prosper and destroy wonderfully. And they shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And we know that Rome pretty much destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD after it sieged it. The second time they sieged it, it completely destroyed the temple. Through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. Again, by peace shall he destroy many. Not by them making wars, but through diplomatic forms of doing things, that he destroys many. This is why it's different than the first three beasts or the first three kingdoms. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes. So when it talks about here the prince of princes, this is where we left off on the over here on the top. I should have highlighted that for us. The prince of hosts. The prince of the host is the same, yet he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. He, verse 25, he shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. So, and then we'll get back to verse 11. So this tells us that this is Rome, because the ones who stood up to Jesus Christ, which is the prince of princes, is Rome. Now we could go to Daniel 9 and we could look at the 70-week prophecy and we could get more details on that, but let's just kind of try to stick to here. But he shall be broken without hand. So Rome shall be broken without hand. And when we saw Babylon was quote unquote broken because Media Persia came and warred against it. Media Persia was broken as we saw that the goat, the he goat, conquered the ram. So it was by wars that Greece destroyed it. Rome came out of one of the divisions of Greece, but yet when it was broken without hand, it was destroyed not from an outside conquering power, just like the other ones were, but basically from within. And we see that in history because basically the 10 horns that can come out of the head makes war against it. And we're going to cover part of that and why, etc., when we get to the trumpets. So this vision here, that this is the explanation. So let's go back to where we left off. So going back to verse 11, he magnifies himself even to the prince of hosts. This is Rome, and by him the daily was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. Let me sure. Okay, yeah. Because the last to second verses says that it's pretty much the end of the vision for now. So going back to here, by Rome, the daily sacrifice was taken away and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. So this word sacrifice is actually a supplemental word and should not be there. It should not be there because it's not part of the original text. It was put there because, oh, this doesn't want to, there we go. It doesn't want to erase it. One more time. All right, whatever. We'll leave it like that. It was an added word. Now, by him, the daily was taken away. And let's go ahead and continue reading it, and we're going to see a little bit more. And we'll reconnect everything together, get it all done together in one shot. A host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Then I heard one saying speaking, and another saying unto that certain saying which spake, how long shall the vision concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And then he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. We spent quite some time, especially in verse 14. But now let's get to how we get there and how we get to 508. Now, we see here, starting with verse 11, that the daily was taken. Then, just focusing on the daily, let's go ahead and mark that in green because we're just going to focus with the daily, and we'll see the other part afterwards. The host was given him against the daily, and this was done by reason of transgression. So it was we'll break it down some more. How long, verse 13, shall the vision concerning the daily, etc., etc., should be? And and the transgression of desolation, but we're just going to focus on the daily for a second here. Again, the word sacrifice is added. The daily is something that is continual. And as we see here, and because this, if we look at the symbolism here, we're looking of symbolism dealing with a ram, goat, and these kind of symbols kind of deal with the sanctuary somewhat because these are animals that were used for the sanctuary. So, but here, this is not dealing with the people of God. This is dealing with pagan nations. So when we look at, let's go right to the interpretation of it. When we see the first animal represents Media Persia. Media Persia was not a Christian nation. Media Persia was a pagan nation. Then we see Greece. Again, Greece was not Christian. Greece was pagan. And then it talks about a king of fierce countenance, understanding dark sentences shall stand up. This king represents Rome. Now, why is it that that Rome is not mentioned by name, but Media Persia and Greece is? That would be a good question. I also had that question myself. The reason being is because Media Persia existed during this time frame, and Greece existed during the time frame of Daniel, but Rome did not. Rome did not come into existence much later on, and Daniel obviously was dead many years prior to Rome coming in. So you couldn't write Rome because Rome didn't exist at that time. So the reason I'm mentioning this whole idea of that they were pagan is because the whole thing with the daily that was taken away deals with paganism, and daily represents paganism. By him, going back to verse 11, by him, which is the second part here of the verse, which is Rome, paganism, well, let's put the word paganism, was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. Here again, we have the word sanctuary that's in connection with what I was speaking of. But it is not the Christian, or not the Christian, it is not the Jewish sanctuary being spoken of, because what Rome did was cast down the daily, which is paganism. If we look at history, that's what Rome did. Rome converted over into Christianity or Catholicism, which with the name Christianity, basically. Again, verse 12, a host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression. A host, what is a host? A host is another word, could be another word for military. A military or a power or a force, you know, a force was given him against paganism. And it cast down the truth to the crown and it practiced and prospered. We're focusing on the daily, not everything else for right now. And so in verse 13, when the question is asked, how long shall it be the vision concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation, to get both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. This whole vision, right, is concerning the daily. Again, when we start the vision from the very beginning, what we're talking about is pagan nations. And when we look at the history, Rome also was pagan, and Rome got rid of paganism. You know, as an influence, as a major force. And we're gonna see some of that here in a little bit when we start getting into Wikipedia and looking at Justinian and what he did, etc. So this is what the daily deals with. It deals with paganism. When is this? How long shall this vision here that we're talking about be for? And now he specifies what this vision is concerning the daily, which is the daily again. And I'm repeating just because it took me a long time before I finally understood this. Verse 11, by Rome, the daily was taken away. The daily comes from all the way from the beginning of the vision, because this vision is about the daily. The daily starts with Medo Persia, Greece, Rome, and then Rome takes the daily away. and the place of the sanctuary. And again, the daily has to do with even paganism had religious services and had its own sanctuary, and the sanctuary of where this daily is held, we could say, or the place of the sanctuary or the place of paganism was cast down. Verse 12, a host was given to him, was given to Rome. Remember, Rome started small and started spreading, and again, like I said, through diplomatic forms and ways was the main form that they conquered, not just militarily, like the other nations, was given him against the daily, against paganism, and this force against paganism, this army against paganism that was given, was by reason of transgression. So it was not a good thing. It was not because of a holy uh, thing. It was actually bad. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Again, if we go back to this whole casting down of the daily or getting rid of the daily by reason of transgression, and we go back to the third church, what did we see? We see when paganism was being conquered, quote unquote, by Christianity, right? We read how Christianity in the second church was being persecuted to death, but Constantine, he saw this. They say he saw this vision, and he decided to convert over to Christianity, and that's when paganism started to get conquered little by little, and a lot of pagans started coming over. Now this, right? This was by reason of transgression, so it's not that they're using the truth, because the truth was cast down to the ground, and it practiced and prospers, as it said in verse 12. So here we start to see, here in verse 12, we could say that we started to see that whole compromise from that aspect, from that perspective of religion between paganism and Christianity. And paganism started to go on its downfall, whilst Christianity was rising. And then if as you see the next videos or studies that we're going to do on the churches, plus the ones that we've already done, it starts to make sense now when it says it cast down the truth to the ground and it practiced and prospered, and we start to connect the dots of who it was that was in the leadership and what were they doing and what doctrines they had. The doctrines that they had, which I already mentioned, were doctrines of Satan. Um, this is why it was being cast down to the ground. So the vision concerning the daily, verse 13. Now, that vision concerning the daily means the taking away of the daily, or the taking away of paganism that starts from the very beginning. And once that is taken away, the transgression of desolation, right? So the vision concerning the daily being taken away, that's the first part here of verse 12. The host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression, and they cast down truth down to the ground. And then there's the transgression of desolation that's being put in, and that's what's being, that transgression of desolation is doing what? Casting down the truth to the ground, and in practice and prosper. That's what's coming in to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. And it said 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And this sanctuary that's being spoken of is a sanctuary in heaven. Yeah. It is so in Daniel 8, as the angel Gabriel hadn't completely finished his explanation, we see verse here 26, a vision of the evening and the morning, which was told is true. It says verse 27, Daniel fainted. It was 6 certain days afterwards I rose up and did the king's business. He was astonished at the vision, but not understood it. So he still hadn't understood the vision. And let me see here where we go to on this one. This deals with John. That's not what I wanted. Let me see here. Okay, so this is Daniel 7. So let's go ahead and Daniel 9. There's this long prayer continuing on. There's this long prayer that happens that Daniel does. Verse 21, Daniel says, "While I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation." So the man Gabriel we see here is that man that spoke to Daniel in the previous chapter. So it's the same man. So Gabriel is the one that's giving the explanation, and he's the one that's been helping him out throughout this whole deal. So we remember that it said 2,300 days. Now there was never a starting point to that 2,300 days. So now here comes verse 21. The man Gabriel, or the angel, basically, we know it's an angel, comes and it tells him in verse 22 that Gabriel informs Daniel, and he talked with Daniel and said, "Oh Daniel, I'm now come forth to give thee skill and understanding." Um, last part of verse 23, therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. The vision here being spoken of is a vision that we just read in chapter 8. So now we spoke about 2,300 days, and this is how we get to, which I think I already covered this in one of the intro studies, but I'm going to cover it again because repetition, and maybe I give you more information. The 2,300 days, here, understand the matter and consider this vision of this 2,300-day vision. It says here, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So 70 weeks are being given from this great 2,300-day vision, okay, is being determined upon thy people, upon your people, the Jews. Okay, we're going to see here later on a little bit more about the we'll see here. This is 70 weeks. We're not there's some people who take the last week of the 70-week prophecy and they put it somewhere in the future. That is a very bad interpretation, and what you just ended up doing, you just destroyed, the whole interpretation of every single interpretation in the Bible, or at least in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, by doing so, and the first coming of Jesus Christ by doing that. 70 weeks are determined by thy people. In other versions, it says they're cut off. So, which is the same thing as determined. From this 2,300-day prophecy, 70 weeks are determined. And to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So this is here to anoint, that's the biggest part here that I want you to focus on, anoint the most holy, because we're going to continue seeing it. Know therefore and understand. Remember, this is about the vision that we just read in chapter 8. From the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. We do read some of this stuff, or some of this history. We read it in like the book of Esther, the book of Ezra, the book of Nehemiah. All those books are kind of, talk around along this timeline here. So basically, what we're actually getting here is the commencement of the 2,300 days, or the 2,300-year prophecy. It starts with the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. And from that point on, onto the Messiah, the Prince, which is the Prince of Hosts that we read about in the previous chapter, which Rome stands up against. That is the Messiah, the Prince of Peace, Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Now, why is this? If we put what's 3 scores? First of all, 3 scores, 20 years to a score. 3 times 20 is 60, and 2 weeks, 62 weeks. It's the second part. The first part says 7. 7 plus 62 is 49 years. Why is it that it says 7 weeks? It has it separated 7 weeks and 62 years, or 62 weeks. And let's go day to year. To go ahead and break this down, 7 weeks, each week has a day. 7 times 7 is 49 days, 49 years. Again, day for your prophetic interpretation, 49 years. And then it says 62 weeks. So 62 times 7. So let's go ahead and bring up a calculator over here. 62 times 7. That's 69 plus 49. No, I'm sorry. Hold on. 7. 62 plus 7 times 30 is minus 30 times, where's my times here? Times 30. Give me a second. Let me get this math straight for a second. If it's not all right, thank you for bearing with me, even though I know you didn't see the time. I understand it. It's just when I'm reading it, I'm trying to present it. I get mixed up with the numbers. Starting again with verse 24. The beginning of this vision, right? Understand the matter and consider the vision. The vision, again, is the one from Daniel 8, the 2300 days. And it talks about 70 weeks are determined. So 70 weeks, let's put this calculator here. Let's go ahead and open this, close this up a little bit, make it as small as possible. All right, so 70 weeks, we know that 70 weeks, or each week it has 7 days, so 70 times 7 is 490 days, or 490 years. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and do a little bit more math. And let's see what else we got here. So this was determined upon thy people, which is, or thy people in the holy city. So this is specifically for the Israelites, or for the Jews in this case. Now, it tells us, verse 25, know therefore, understand from the going forth the commandment, restore and build Jerusalem until the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, 62 weeks. So from this command to rebuild until Jesus Christ shall be, it says here, 7 plus 62. That's 69. If we multiply that times 7, because there's 7 days in 69 weeks, we come out to 483. The question was, why is it that we have it in two specific separate time periods? It's all still part of the same 70 weeks, so let's not separate anything from where it's at. It's all still part of it. The reason for it is because we see here that the first part, the 7 weeks and 62 weeks, then it says, the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. I forget where it's at in the New Testament, but to cut time down and not make this any longer, if you look in the New Testament, it was told to Jesus Christ that the temple, it took them 46 years, I believe, was the response to rebuild the temple. When he says in 3 days, like the temple will be destroyed, and in 3 days he'll rebuild it, and he was speaking about his body. And the Jewish people did not understand what he was saying, and they say, well, it took us 46 years. What do you mean you're going to rebuild it in 3 days? So the first 7 weeks, which is 7 times 7, 49, the first 49 years, the temple is to be rebuilt. And then there's another 62 weeks, or again, 62. So we'll go here, 62 times 7. There's another 434 years from that time period all the way to Messiah the Prince. And so when we look at the commandment, which we already covered in that study, the commandment is found, I believe, in Ezra. And that's going to be, as a matter of fact, I could probably give it to you real quick here. It's going to be in Ezra chapter 7. It's in Ezra chapter 7. That is where that commandment is given. And so when that commandment was given, that was given in the year 457. So when we do 457, and we'll call it, let's do do it backwards here with negative math, but you guys know how to minus 483. It comes out to the year 26. Okay. Now, the year 26, because there is no year 0, we have to add one more, takes us to year 27. So we see how perfectly from the year 457, from the time it was given, all the way to the Messiah, we have um, this first 7 weeks and 3 scores in 2 weeks. And then after 3 score and 2 weeks, it tells us, verse 26, the Messiah shall be cut off, right? He should die, but not for himself. Again, just like we read about Rome, that it was not going to come, it was not going to be destroyed by hands, because it gets destroyed by himself from within. So the Messiah shall be cut off, or he should be taken out, be killed, but not for himself. He's not dying for himself. He's dying for who? As we all know, he's dying for every single one of us. And the people of the prince that shall come, who's that? Who's first of all the prince that shall come? The prince that shall come is Jesus Christ. Okay, we know that because that's Messiah the Prince. And the people that come, and we'll go ahead and put that blue, is the people of that prince. And who's that? That is the Jewish nation. They shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Now, let's continue reading and double verify when I speak about the people. And if I'm wrong, we'll correct it. And he, who's this he? Shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Now, it talks about 1 week. So we have, out of the 49 years, right? So we go again, 7 plus 62 times 7, that's 483, minus 49, 483 plus 7 equals 490. Those are the remaining 7 years. That's the remaining week. We have not covered that week. So now this last part of verse 27 is that last week, that 490th, the last 7 years of that 490-year prophecy. He, Jesus Christ, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, or for 7 years. And in the midst of the week, which is 3.5 days, in the midst of the week is 3.5 days, or in 3.5 years, he shall cause sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Remember, it also said here in verse 26, he shall be cut off. And so we know that when he is the ultimate sacrifice, the sacrifice and the oblation to cease is that Jewish system of sacrifice, or the, not Jewish system, but the Israeli system, Jewish system, let's just keep it simple, of sacrifice that they've been doing for many, 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 many years. Because he is the ultimate sacrifice. It'll cause it to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So let's go ahead and relook at this again with what we've already read so far, and in connection to this here. Now, why does it say, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, that determined shall be poured upon the desolate? If you remember, Jesus said to his, well, not necessarily to his disciples, but from when he was with his disciples, he said, "Your house is left you empty." I believe was the quote. It says here, so again, verse 27, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease when he dies, and for the overspreading of abominations, so that the abominations might overspread, he shall make it desolate. What is he making desolate? Remember what the beginning of the explanation is? 70 weeks are determined. Know therefore, verse 25, from going forth the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, right? The street shall be built again, and wall even in troublous times. So the Jewish nation was still not desolate. God still had not left them. But the problem is that once they rejected the Son of God, They rejected Jesus Christ. What happened? Jesus left it desolate. And when he leaves it desolate and he removes himself from that nation, he leaves it open for the overspreading of abominations, even unto the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So this is chapter 9, and I believe uh, Jesus mentions to remember Daniel. Let me look that up real quick, so we could put this on here. Yeah, so we see here in Matthew 24, we go down to verse 15 and 16, and it says, "When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand, that let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains." Now, this is not necessarily speaking about the abomination of desolation spoken of in Daniel 8. And the reason being is because here he's speaking to them, to the Jews. The abomination of desolation that is spoken of is part of in Daniel 8 has to do with that whole vision of taking away the daily, and then there's the abomination of desolation. Or let's read that again from Daniel 8 to be more specific. Um, it says here, the transgression of desolation, not the abomination of desolation, but the transgression of desolation, and which we'll cover the transgression of desolation later on, which has already been covered, which is the transgression of desolation in Ezekiel. When we see that, where were we here? So we see it's two different desolations. This is the abomination of desolation. So when we saw Daniel 8, going back to Daniel 8, verse 27, after Jesus Christ confirms it, causes in the middle of the week or in 3.5 years. So we said that we got to the year 27 plus 3.5. That gives us the year 30.5, which is really round up to the year 31 because their calendar is not like our calendar. The year 31 is the year that Jesus Christ died, right? This is why it says in the middle of the week or in the year 31 after Christ, in the year 31, when he dies, he causes a sacrifice and oblation to cease. And that's what Jesus did on the cross, or part of that's what happened as part of the event in the cross. Then it talks about, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. So then Jesus will leave Jerusalem, right? Because he says, your house is left to you empty. Let's get that verse on. So we go to that conversation I was speaking about in Matthew 23. It's a good read, but to get right to the point, where it says, "O Jerusalem," Jesus says, "Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee." So here we have the Jews, again, when it said here, verse 26, "The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary." Okay, this is not speaking about Rome. Yes, Rome was the reason or the tool used to destroy the sanctuary, the city and the sanctuary. But why was it? It was because the people of the prince, the people of of Jesus Christ, the Jewish people, they're the ones that destroyed the city and the sanctuary. Why is that? Again, let's go to Matthew 23. We already read Matthew 24 when you see the abomination of desolation. He spoke about Matthew 23 here. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that thou killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathered her chickens under her wings, and you will not." So they killed prophets. They stoned the prophets that Jesus sent to them in the past. Verse 38, "Behold, your house is left unto you desolate." Now Jesus Christ was still there, but we know that Jesus, after they rejected him, right? They finally rejected him, and that's the reason he was put on the cross. Because of that, their house or their nation was left desolate. God was no longer there giving his protection, and Jesus Christ was no longer there protecting them. So it tells us this is why, for the overspreading of abominations, he, the prince that shall come, Jesus Christ, shall make it desolate. He leaves their house desolate. Again, your house is left unto you desolate. And because of that, they no longer have any protection, and there's an overspreading of abominations, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Who are the desolate now? The desolate here is the Jewish nation. This is again why in Matthew 24, it says here in verse 15 and 16, Jesus telling them, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Now, this abomination of desolation is speaking about that, but it's also speaking about the people who raised up, pretty much, long story short, is Rome. When you see Rome stand in the holy place, right, which is Jerusalem, let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. And now, who were the ones that ended up fleeing when we look at history? It was the Christians, not the Jewish nation. The newest Jewish nation, which was left desolate, were completely destroyed. Or I don't want to say completely destroyed, but they were destroyed, right? And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate, because they were desolate, not the Christians. The Christians had Christ, but the Jewish nation, did not. They rejected him. And so the 70th week cannot be taken off and put somewhere in the future. Again, this is bad interpretation, destruction of God's prophetic message to us by those who bring it up, which is not the people who bring it up today. Yes, they are participating in it. They did not invent this. This came from way before them, and because of the fact that a lot of these learnings that the majority of Christianity comes from the Catholic Church. This is why there is wrong interpretations. Again, we already spoke about where these doctrines came from during the third and fourth church, which is the next video you guys will see. So this whole thing had to do going back to Justinian. The whole point of this matter was to cover Rome and Justinian. So before Justinian, let's start looking at some Wikipedia articles here, and I want to make this quick. We have this pretty good article here, Christianity as a Roman state religion. I'm going to read some of it real quick, because I think it does a very good job in already covering a whole bunch of stuff I covered. In the year before the Council of Constantinople in 381, right? So the first Nicene Council is in 325. Constantinople converts before 325, and he creates this not Constantinople, I'm sorry, Constantine. Constantine gets the first Nicene Council to go in 325, and now we're talking about the year before the Council of Constantinople in 381. The Trinitarian version of Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire when Emperor Theodosius issued the Edict of Thessalonica in 380, which recognized the Catholic orthodoxy of Nicene Christians as the Roman Empire's state religion. Historians refer to the Nicene Church associated with emperors in a variety of ways as the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, the Imperial Church, the Imperial Roman Church, or the Byzantine Church. So basically, they're all the same thing. Although some of these terms are also used for water communions extending outside the Roman Empire. Earlier in the 4th century, following the Diocletianic persecution of 303 to 313, remember the second church, there was 10 days of persecution, 10 years of persecution, day for year. Here again, we've seen it from Wikipedia. Let's skip to Constantine the Great had convened councils of bishops to define the orthodoxy of the Christian faith and to expand on earlier Christian councils. A series of ecumenical councils convened by successive Roman emperors met during the 4th and the 5th centuries, but Christianity continued to suffer rifts and schism, etc., etc. Let's go here where it says, I believe, let's start here. However, apart from the Reformation schism, because it's now past that time period and before where we want to get, the church as an institution persisted in communion, if not without tension, between the East and the West. In the 6th century, the Byzantine armies, 6th century is the year 500 to 599, of the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I recovered Italy and other regions of the Western Mediterranean shore. All right, so let's go down here where it talks about Justinian. Justinian I, the first one, who became emperor in 527, and this is why I'm saying I made a mistake. Now, Justinian, we're going to see, did make laws and stuff like that, but it wasn't until after 527. Um, so that is where I messed up. Now, because of time, and I think time is ticking away, and I have a few articles. Let's try to see how far we go. He recognized, okay, so who became emperor 527, recognized the patriarchs of Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem as the supreme authorities in the state-sponsored Chalcedonian church apparatus. And that's basically, if we go here, it's Chalcedonian Christianity is a term referring to the branches of Christianity that accept and uphold theological resolutions of the Council of Chalcedon, the Fourth Ecumenical Council held in 451. And then it continues on, but basically, state-sponsored church. However, Justinian claimed the right and duty of regulating by his laws the minutious details of worship and discipline, and also of dictating the theological opinions to be held in the church. Now, this here he gave, and I have another Wikipedia article on that. He gave that to the Pope, to the Roman Pope. So these laws I spoke about were given by Justinian, but it was after 508. The 508 has to do with what we were reading about this the daily being taken away, which we'll get back into before we finish. In Justinian's day, the Christian church was not entirely under the emperor's control, even in the East, etc. And again, this is a very good stuff for you to read. And it'll be great if you guys read it, but because of time, I'm going to go ahead and skip some of this. Let's go to debates with Christianity, because it seems like I might have some stuff here that I might have looked at. Christian scholars and populists within the empire were increasingly embroiled in debates regarding Christology, regarding the nature of Christ. Opinions ranged from belief that Jesus was entirely human to belief that he was entirely divine. And this is one of the things I was speaking about, going into the Nicene Creed, there were a whole bunch of different opinions, stuff that we already covered during the Third Church. Opinions ranged from the belief that the most persistent debate was that between the Homoousian view, the Father and Son are one substance, defined at the Council of Nicaea. That's the first, you can see right there, first Concilium Council in the year 325, and later championed by Athanasius of Alexandria. Right, because who ended up winning? What did we just read? The Trinity doctrine ended up winning, and we already know this because we already covered this, but we're getting it from Wikipedia now. And the Arian view, the Father and the Son are similar, but the Father is greater than the Son. So we have the Athanasian of Alexandria, the Trinity doctrine, that basically ends up being, we'll read it. If we don't read it, it's here somewhere. We have three persons, one God, one substance. Right here, the Father and the Son are one substance. So it's pretty much the same one God. They're the same. It's just three different persons in that one substance. And then the Arian view that there is a Father and a Son, and they're similar, but the Father is greater than the Son. So emperors, and we'll get back to that here in a second. I'm going to highlight it to remember. Emperors thereby became even more involved with the increasingly divided early church. So again, this is why the Nicene Council was there, because the churches were divided in their theology. Now, the Arian view, as we've already covered, was considered, and we might see it later on here, it was considered heretic. Now, this is very interesting. The heresy is that the Father is greater than the Son. But if we go to the Bible, we don't need to guess if that's true or not. We'll allow Jesus to speak for himself. And Jesus says in John 14, verse 28, "Ye have heard how I said unto you, I go away and come again unto you. If ye love me, you will rejoice, because I said, I go unto the Father. For my Father is greater than I." So when Arius said, or believes, his belief is that the Father is greater than the Son, he didn't make that up. Jesus Christ said it himself, that the Father is greater than he is. So this is something interesting. Just so again, showing you from the Bible and putting these secular articles together and showing you how it all comes together so beautifully. The book of Revelation is a book that is just spot on history, because it foretold history before it even happened. So Constantine going back to this article, Constantine backed the Nicene Creed of Nicaea, but was baptized on his deathbed by by Eusebius of Nicomedia, bishop with Arian sympathies. Very interesting because Constantine ended up believing and backing up the Trinitarian doctrine, but ended up being baptized by Arian bishop. Um, and then I don't know if I remember saying this, but then I said depending who had the ear of the emperor was the group who had the most power. I might have said this in one of the previous, maybe one of the previous churches, but if I didn't, again, whoever had the ear of the emperor had the power. Here we go. So his successor, Constantine II, supported Arian positions under his rule. The Council of Constantinople in 360 supported the Arian view. After the interlude of Emperor Julian, who wanted to return to the pagan Roman Greek religion, the West stuck to the Nicene Creed. Wow. While Arianism or semi-Arianism was dominant in the East under Emperor Valens, until Emperor Theodosius I called the Council of Constantinople in 381, which reasserted the Nicene view and rejected the Arian view. This council further refined the definition of orthodoxy, issuing the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed. I'm thinking what I just told you, that whoever had the ear, etc. I might have not covered that. That will definitely be covered during the seals, during the 7 seals. When we cover the 7 seals, we're going to cover that. That's more connected to that because it's the same time period, just looking at it from a different point of view. But what I find really interesting is that I did not know this. I didn't read this before we started this. After the interlude of Emperor Julian, right? And we saw that now after Constantine I died off and Constantius II, he supported the Arian position. We see that there is an interlude Emperor Julian, and he wanted to return to the pagan Roman Greek religion. So he wanted to go back to paganism. So two things. The one that is not the but the most obvious one with what we read, remember when I said that the daily was taken away, and that was and we'll see that it's going to be in 508. Paganism was still there. Even though people were converting Christianity, paganism hadn't gone away yet. And we have this emperor who wants to go back to the pagan Roman religion. So therefore, the West stuck to the Nicene Creed, which is a Trinity doctrine, which comes from what? Paganism. If you think about it, if you want to return it back to pagan, you're going to get the thing that's closest to paganism. While Arianism, right, which deals about the Father actually having a son, was dominant in the East, because these were, again, the two biggest ideas that were battling each other. It's just very interesting that this whole connection. So there's more stuff here. Good stuff for you guys to read. I'm not gonna read this because the rest of this stuff, like Islam and stuff like that, we'll cover that during the trumpets. Another thing I want to cover here, let's go here. Clovis the First. Let me see here. Justinian. Let's go to Justinian because no, actually, Justinian comes after Clovis. And okay, I believe that's gonna be pretty much it from what I have. Okay, so let's get this all organized. Let's resume here. So Clovis, right? So as I said, there was still paganism, even though Christianity was coming in. Now we have here Clovis, and he reigned all the way up to November the year 511. He was the first king of the Franks to unite all of the Frankish tribes under one ruler. And this is one of the out of the one of the 10 horns that came out. You have this guy here. And let's continue on. So Clovis is also significant because of his baptism in 508. Remember, I kept mentioning the date 508. Largely at the behest of his wife, Clota, who later be venerated as a saint for this act, celebrated today in both the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. The adoption by Clovis of Nicene Christianity, as opposed to the Arianism of most other Germanic tribes, led to widespread conversion among the Frankish people, to religious unification across what is now modern-day France. So long story short, and we'll keep reading. Clovis, he was pagan, and Clovis, he yeah, it says it here somewhere. Clovis ended up being the last king to convert over to Christianity, bringing in the last bit of the kingdoms, bringing them into Christianity. So paganism, little by little, was being taken down by different kingdoms, different kingdoms, different kingdoms. And so here's because I'm looking here at 508. So again, he was born as a pagan. Let's read here. Sometime after 507, Clovis heard about Jarrick's plan to escape from his monastic prison and had him murdered. Around the same time, Clovis convinced Prince such and such to murder his father, earning him his nickname as such and such. Following the murder of Clovis, betrayed Clodoric and had his envoy strike him down. Sometime later, Clovis visited his old ally Ragnachar in Cambrai. Following his conversion to Christianity in 508, many of Clovis' pagan retainers had defected to Ragnachar's side, making him a political threat. Um, so again, this tells us that Clovis was a pagan from birth, and then he ended up in 508 becoming a Christian and bringing France into Christianity. So when we go back here to Daniel 8, Rome, by Rome, the daily paganism was taken away. Remember that these horns here, or not these horns, these 10 kingdoms come from Rome, right? The 10 horns. And so it's all part of Rome in a sense. And when the daily was taken away, when paganism was taken away, when there was no more kingdoms that were professed pagans, Clovis, France being the last one, that happened in 508 when he was baptized. Then the daily was taken away. And now we could go back to Daniel 11, where we covered a lot of this stuff. Okay, not Daniel 11, I'm sorry, Daniel 12. We go to Daniel 12. So we go Daniel 12, verse 11. And from the time that the daily paganism shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there should be 1,290 days. So the daily was taken away in the year 508 because the last king from these 10 different nations, because we already knew that Rome was already turning Christian, so these 10 different nations, some still had paganism, but the last one that baptism was in 508. 508 plus 1,290 days or 1,290 years takes us to 1798. And it says here, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up. So now let's talk about the abomination that makes desolate, because remember, this abomination makes desolate. We already read about the little horn, which spoke great things against God, and because of that, he makes desolate. And this is a religious power. And we already read about, again, how we have the Athanasian kingdoms and the Arian kingdoms. And I already spoke about the three Arian kingdoms being taken away um, by the Athanasian ones. And the little horn finally be able to having power. Now, let's go here. I'm pretty sure there's a whole bunch more stuff I could give you, but I'm going to go ahead and try to cut some of it down. You guys could read these articles for yourselves. So Justinian the First, this is the Justinian, the great emperor, as it says here, the great was the Eastern Roman emperor from 527 to 565. This was when I was spoken about Justinian. And he made laws during the time of Anastasius was the 508. When Anastasius died in 518, Justin was proclaimed the new emperor, and Justinian showed a lot of ambition, the help from Justinian, and Justinian showed a lot of ambition, etc. And there's some legislative activities. and I'm trying to save you guys some time. And there's wars and religious activities. So let's go to religious policy. As in his secular administration, as in his secular administration, despotism appeared also in the emperor's ecclesiastical policy. He regulated everything, both in religion and in law. At the very beginning of his reign, he deemed it proper to promulgate by law the church's belief in the Trinity and the Incarnation, and to threaten all heretics with the appropriate penalties. So imagine this. You have to believe in the Trinity by force. Okay, this is the God that was being forced among the people. Whereas he subsequently declared that he intended to deprive all distributors of orthodoxy of the opportunity for such offense by due process of law. He made the National Constantinopolitan Creed the sole symbol of the church and accorded legal force to the canons of the four ecumenical councils. The bishops in attendance of the Council of Constantinople in 536 recognized that nothing could be done in the church contrary to the emperor's will and command, while on his side the emperor, in the case of the Patriarch Anthimus, reinforced the ban of the church with temporal prescription. Justinian protected the purity of the church by suppressing heretics. Now, who are these heretics? It's no longer pagans because, I mean, yes, pagans as well. He made laws against pagans. We'll read that if later if we do read it. But the point is, the heretics were anybody who was Arian, right? Because remember, those were the two biggest forces that were going on. So Arians were also Christians. They just did not believe in the Trinity, and they were not forcing Arianism into people like the Trinity doctrine or the Trinitarians were by force and by death. Justinian, at least by prison, Justinian protected the purity of the church by suppressing heretics. He neglected no opportunity to secure the rights of the church and clergy and to protect and extend monasticism. It's dealing with more religious stuff. So he neglected no opportunity to secure the rights of the church and clergy. So what did he do? He secured the rights of the church. Here we see that Justinian is combining state and church together, and this state and church is persecuting all other Christians who do not want to participate in their Trinitarian worship. He granted the monks the right to inherit property from private citizens and the right to receive solemnia or annual gifts from the imperial treasury or from the taxes of certain provinces, and he prohibited lay confiscation of monastic estates. Now, this is very interesting because not that I want to get into politics, and not that I'm saying one side is better than the other, but we have one guy who, we will see Sunday observance is what's going to be pushed here. The next president that's going to get voted in is going to be pushing that, and it's going to be giving Christian churches, quote unquote, power that they didn't have before. And we're going to see a repeat probably of Justinian stuff. Authoritarian rule, it says here, Justinian's religious policy reflected the imperial conviction that the unity of the empire presupposed unity of faith, and appeared to him obvious that this faith could only be the orthodoxy. Those of a different belief were subjected to persecution, which imperial legislation had effected from the time of Constantius II, and which would now vigorously continue. The Codex contained two statutes that decreed the total destruction of paganism, right? And we're going to look at the Codex next. Even in private life, these provisions were zealously enforced. Contemporary sources, etc., told severe persecutions even of men in high positions. Now, again, the only way that this could happen is that if all the kingdoms, by 508, as we saw, the last kingdom converted over to Christianity. So obviously the whole so paganism, now this is like the last bit that they're trying to get rid of, the last little bit of paganism. So the daily, as it says here, the daily shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up. Daniel 8 verse 11. Paganism was taken away, and we see here Justinian setting up church and state. And who does he set up as the religious leader upon which everybody has to fall under? Is the papacy. And the papacy, as we've already seen, and you're gonna guys are gonna continue seeing in the rest of these presentations, is that desolation or that abomination. I'm sorry, that abomination that maketh desolate, right? It is that thing that makes God go away, just like what happened with the Jewish nation. Just as we read here in Daniel 9, that for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. Jesus Christ shall make it desolate. How? Your house is left to you desolate. Jesus left their house desolate. And so we see when you see, we'll talk about Jezebel and stuff like that in the next study. Let's go ahead and go to the Corpus Juris Civilis. This has to do with the, as it says here, the body of civil law. Let's see here. Let's go ahead. Well, there's the codex that it was mentioned here, and let's go ahead and look at some of this stuff. All right, so the Codex Justinian's Codex Justinianus or Codex Justiniani was the first part to be finished on April 529. It contained in Latin, etc., etc. Legislation about religion. Let's go ahead and skip to that. There's a whole bunch of good stuff you guys can read here. Numerous provisions serve to secure the status of Christianity as the state religion of the empire. So all this is being done by state power. This is not being done by God himself. This is being done by man. Uniting church and state. That's what they did. This is why in our Constitution, even though it doesn't specifically state it, but it was in mind that church and state should not be united. And we will be seeing a union of church and state here, I believe, starting next year, and making anyone who is not connected to the Christian church a non-citizen. So numerous provisions serve to secure the status of Christianity as a state religion of the empire, uniting church and state, and making anyone who is not connected to the Christian church a non-citizen. I repeat it because history repeats itself. The Christianity referred to is blah, 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 as defined by the state church, which excluded a variety of other major Christian sects. So when it talks about paganism, it's not just paganism. Like I said, the heretics, those who they would consider heretics, were excluded, like it says here, excluded a variety of other major Christian sects. So if you're not a Trinitarian, then you are a Christian a sect, and it excludes you. Which exclude a variety of other major Christian sects in existence at the time, such as the Church of the East and the Oriental Orthodoxy. And if I remember correctly, I thought the Church of the East was Arian, but I might be wrong. Because by this time, Arianism was kind of knocked out. The very first law and codex, actually, no, I am mistaken. The three little horns still were in existence during this time period because in 538, is when the Ostrogoth, which was the last nation or kingdom that was Aryan, was finally knocked out. Out of the little horn. Let's go back to the little horn here. You can go back to the little horn. And remember what we read with the subdued three kings, verse 24, Daniel 7:24. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom, the 10 horns or the 10 kingdoms out of Rome, the 10 tribes out of Rome, or 10 kings that shall arise. They comes from Rome, and another shall arise after them, which the papacy arose after these 10 kingdoms. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And these 3 kings are 3 of these horns, and these 3 were Aryan in nature. So this is why I believe the Church of the East, if I remember reading, we read something about, yes, we're Arians, because the guy on the West, he wanted to go back to paganism, so he decided to keep the Trinity doctrine, while the ones on the East were Arian. That was that really cool, like wow, like I did not see that before. We have the law against heresy. The very first law in the Codex requires all persons under the jurisdiction of the empire to hold the Christian faith. And which faith is this? The Trinitarian faith. This was primarily aimed at heresies such as Nestorianism, which is, well, you guys could read that, pause it or anything, and you guys could look at this article even more. The text later became the springboard for discussions of international law, especially the questions of just what persons are under the jurisdiction of a given state or legal system. And then we have the law against paganism. Other laws, while not aimed at pagan belief as such, forbid particular pagan practices. For example, it is provided that all persons present a pagan sacrifice may be indicted as it for murder. So what's funny is law against heresies is law against other Christians who do not participate in the Trinity. But law against paganism was not really aimed at pagan beliefs because, again, they were kind of together with the Trinity, but it's just the practices, like of sacrifice and stuff like that. That's going to be murder. I went back here because I wanted to see. So after the interlude of Emperor Julian, says going back to the first article, Christianity as a Roman state religion. After the interlude of Emperor Julian, who wanted to return to the pagan Roman Greek religion, the West stuck to the Nicene Creed, where Arianism was dominant in the East. Which, like I said, is very interesting. So you got Julian. Oh no, this is between 355 to 360. This is not Julian connected to Justinian. So, but it is very interesting, some of these things. Now, the setting up of the here we go. So this is another Wikipedia article. The article is not important, but the reference is. And we remember I spoke about Justinian wrote laws setting up the papacy as the supreme ruler or the supreme whatever guy. Over here, if we look over here, this is a reference to a different article. Levillian Philip 2002, The Papacy in Encyclopedia, Volume 2, Psychology Press, page 832. And here's the ISBN number for the book, 978-041592232. And this was retrieved in July 17, 2015. Okay, so here's the quote. Pope John II received from Justinian a letter dated June 6, 533. In his letter, Justinian proclaimed that the Holy See, which is the papacy, is the leader of all the holy churches and confirmed the need for all churches to join together with Rome. So when we look here, in Daniel 9, let's go to Daniel 9. I'm sorry, Daniel 8. Go back to Daniel 8. How long shall the vision concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trod underfoot? So starting from the beginning of this whole vision, 2,300 days. And the other thing is, we know it's Medo-Persia, and another reason why it starts in Medo-Persia is because the 70-day or the 70-week prophecy, the 490 years, where it talks about when we start this 2,300-day prophecy or 2,300 year, all the way to the end, where it says it starts, and it talks about the first 490 years, where it talks about Jesus Christ's first coming and when that time frame starts. We see that this was done during what time? During the time when was the rule to give to restore Jerusalem and the sanctuary? This was done in during the Media-Persia time frame, not during the time of Greece. Okay, so there's another whole connection of this whole prophecy. And actually, what I wanted was what we need to go to is Daniel 12, not Daniel 8. Daniel 12. Verse 11, from the time that the daily shall be taken away, that was when paganism was completely taken away and Christianity became the religion of all of Rome, which includes the 10 little horns that are in Rome, which is all that because Rome was still standing. You just had these 10 kingdoms that came from it. When the daily was taken away, Clovis was the last king who made France Christian. shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up from that time period. And we see Justinian right after 508, he's making these laws and he's saying, hey, and he's setting up the desolation that makes desolate. He's setting it up, not that it's set that is it's started, but that he's setting it up. There shall be 1,290 days. And that starts from when the daily is taken away. And then we have that where we have Justinian, like we read here, saying, hey, the Holy See is the leader of all the holy churches and confirmed the need for all the churches to join together with Rome. And as we read, he made laws which if you did not follow the papacy, there was you're going to be there's consequences for that. And this is where the 508 starts, and this is again a supplement to what was spoken of. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the study here because I believe we went quite a while, and I'm sorry for that. But there was a lot of information, and there's some information I kind of skimmed over just to keep this short. So let's go ahead and have a last prayer before we close this video. Thank you, Father, for this study, and I hope that people who watch it can actually learn a lot from it, and actually see these evidences and give more weight to what's being presented to them up to this point, and it'll be a good foundation for them for the next studies that we're going to do. Thank you for helping me explain it, and that this time is well spent for them that are going to watch this. Again, thank you very much for everything you've done and for helping me help others through your truth, so that they too can also come to you and worship you in truth and in spirit, and disregard this pagan god that has been introduced to the Christian world. Thank you again, Father, for everything. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so next time the next video, I'm gonna try to put this video as soon as possible, so that you guys could watch it hopefully before the next video comes up, which will continue on to the fourth church, and hopefully keeping this all in mind in the back of your head. What I already covered will make even more sense, and again, it'll make more sense throughout the rest of the studies. All right, have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you guys in the next study.